Should I have my child evaluated for learning disabilities? Does my child need a label? These are the questions parents often have when their child is struggling at school, either academically or socially. And those are the questions we're going to explore today. Now, the thing to think about is that learning disabilities are really on a continuum, right? So like, if a child has a very mild, say, sensory problem, then it's just a little glitch. It's a personality glitch, right? Or if it's a little more severe, they might have sensory processing disorder. And if it's more severe, it might actually fall on the autism spectrum. So it's just a continuum. So for example, I always say, my hair doesn't feel right. And my kids all laugh at me because they're like, who cares what it feels like? It's what does it look like? But for me, it's what does it feel like? If my hair feels weird, I don't like it. Now, is that spectrum? I've been accused of being on the spectrum because I have some other strange behaviors, but I don't think so. Do I have a sensory processing disorder? I don't think so. I think I'm just a kinesthetic, tactile person who relates to my world more in the kinesthetic, tactile realm. And so how things feel are important to me because that's how I relate to my environment. So same is true with things like auditory processing disorder. If a child has a weakness, okay, they have some weaknesses in their auditory system and we need to build that up. Or if it's a little more extreme, we might say, oh, they have an auditory processing disorder. And if it's even more extreme and they're like always covering their heads and not being able to relate because of sound, then we might say that they're on the spectrum, the autism spectrum. And again, the same is true with visual perception. If it's just a little weakness, okay, we just have a child who's gifted visually and has a little bit of a difficult time, controlling that creative visual span, that creative visual perception. Or it's a little more severe. My child actually has a visual processing disorder. Or it's a little more severe and they're so far out there that they're imagining things that don't exist, and then it might be a spectrum disorder or even a mental health issue. And again, the same is true with attention issues, right? If we just have a child who's very, very busy, maybe they're just very, very busy. Maybe they're kinesthetic. Maybe they like to move. Maybe we just need to train them to sit still when they need to sit still and to allow them to be interacting with their environment when they can. Or if it's a little bit more severe, maybe they have attention deficit disorder. Maybe they do need to have that addressed in a more systematic fashion. So again, it's a continuum, right? We don't need to panic just because our child has a problem paying attention. We don't have to panic just because our child doesn't like the way his socks feel. We don't have to panic just because our child is daydreaming or because they reverse their letters. All those things are like little problems. It's just if they get into the extreme that they actually will be diagnosed and have a label. If the child's problems are minor, we can certainly address those without a diagnosis. And the school will probably not give accommodations anyway. But even if the child's problems are severe, getting to those roots, finding out what those roots are, and then addressing those roots is really going to be the key to their success and being able to live the most fulfilled life as possible. So at the end of the day, there's really 2 points to getting an evaluation. One is finding out what are the root causes to my child's learning issues. The other is getting the resources necessary to support the child. In either case, an evaluation by a developmental psychologist can be extremely helpful. But in the case of a minor issue, they really don't need to have a label. They just need to fill in those gaps. And that's best done by either a knowledgeable occupational therapist, by a chiropractic neurologist, or by a developmental psychologist who works in the field. Those kinds of specialists are the ones who will really actually address the problems. To get labeled, you need to go to a developmental psychologist or a developmental pediatrician. They will give you the label, and once those labels are in place, then the schools can give you accommodations and eventually, if necessary, put the child on an individualized education plan so that they can get the services they need. And in some states, you can even get extra funding to help pay for the extra services that are needed for the child. So those would be the reasons why you actually need a label. But otherwise, really the most important thing is just to get to the root of the problem and address those weaknesses. And then the child can be off and running and achieving his highest potential. And if you are concerned that your child might be attention deficit, you might check out my video on attention deficit disorder without medication. Thanks, and have a great day.